would they try and do, the take out the trash Tuesday type of approach where you put it out in a day where people might be distracted?
The Times and Sunday Times Washington editor Katy Balls is awakening in her bed in Washington, D.C. and just about to join me. Good morning, Katy.
Good morning from
Good.
my sofa.
Oh, you're on your sofa. Good for you. Good for you. We better start with the Ukrainian peace plan, which has caused ripples of discord and disquiet over here in Europe.
Yes, and this began to emerge in the middle of the week when you had a report in Axios about this plan. And the report from Axios had covered a lot of White House insider information on Israel-Palestine, for example. But quite quickly, there started to be accusations that perhaps had come from the Russian side as a way of bouncing out the information. And I think since then, it's just been a growing sense that the peace deal, as Donald Trump might put it, that's being presented, is more in favor of the Russians and the Ukrainians. And Zelensky and others are going to find this very difficult to accept. Now, that's not to say Ukraine won't accept it. We don't know yet. But we do know that Donald Trump is talking about a Thanksgiving deadline, which is next Thursday. Under this deal, Ukraine would have to give up territory, the Donbass region, and would have limits on the army. Questions about this idea that you wouldn't be able to persecute for war crimes after it, and lots of things I think which are hard to swallow for the Ukrainians. And now I think the European leaders, of course, trying to see if they can play a maneuver like last time, which is to try to win Trump back in their camp, change a few things. But I think certainly on the US side, there is just an appetite for this to be over, which we've known for quite a long time.
Well, sure, I suspect there is in Ukraine as well. The people do
I
want this.
suspect Ukraine have more conditions on what they would say is acceptable would be over. Whereas for Donald Trump, I think he would just like to say that another war has been ended.
Well, sure. But can I just ask, two questions immediately spring to mind then. A, what chance does Zelensky and the European leaders have of changing fundamentally any of those 28 points of the peace treaty? And B, if Ukraine doesn't agree with them and Europe doesn't agree with them in the end, by the end of Thursday, what happens then?
So I think there's always a chance. We know that Donald Trump has often come up with deadlines, such as on tariffs, even to Putin, and then just torn them up, whether it's to give someone less on wartime. So it's perhaps not cast iron. I think the difficulty for Zelensky is that there is just, I think, he's never had a natural rapport with Donald Trump. You have had European leaders work really hard to try and improve their relationship, and they have to a degree. But certainly, I think it feels as though this deal has got to a certain place whereby the tricky thing for Zelensky, which I think you're aware of, he is aware of if you look at his statements, is it's too easy probably for the White House and Trump to cast him off as being the difficult one if he's raising quite valid concerns about some of the things being presented. So how do you do that without Donald Trump saying, look, I've tried all these things and each time you tell me they're not good enough, which is very much the attitude. I think on your point about what happens if he says no and Donald Trump said, okay, well, off you go then. We did get a flash of this in the Oval Office on Friday when the topic was brought up. And you had Trump saying, well, if he doesn't want to take this deal, Zelensky can keep fighting. The question, of course, is Zelensky fighting with no help from America whatsoever when it comes to intelligence, when it comes to some of the weapons they want and so forth? That's not clear yet, but certainly I think there is a slight underlying sense in this, partly perhaps because they're trying to push Ukraine into accepting a deal, that there will be consequences if they say no.
Okay. Now, when can we expect the Epstein files to be released?
So since Donald Trump signed the document this week, you now have a situation where there is a 30-day deadline for the Department of Justice to release the files. And that means there's various things going on with the courts, I think in Florida yesterday, in the bid to release them. But we don't have an exact day. There is a question as would they try and do, the take out the trash Tuesday type of approach where you put it out in a day where people might be distracted.
Yeah.
That's always one option. But I think the other thing here is legally they're probably working out what they can say in it. And you can expect when these documents do eventually drop, if there's a bunch of redacted names, you're going to have figures, including some in Maga, some of Trump supporters saying this is still a conspiracy.
Yes, you are, aren't you? Now, Trump met Zoran Mamdani, the New York City mayor, yesterday, who he's called a communist. Did they hit it off? Did they get on? Did they play golf? What happened?
No golf yet, but judging by how it went, that could be the next thing. Maybe a holiday together. It was a real love-in, or at least there was a lot of love coming from Donald Trump. Mandani was very polite, but did look a little bit awkward at points, as the U.S. president kept saying, how great and how reasonable the man he said was a communist and who was going to ruin New York City, and therefore endorsed Andrew Cuomo over him was. And I think in some ways it was not that surprising because we know Donald Trump loves a winner. It's why he gets on with Keir Starmer. He thinks
Yeah.
that his election result was very impressive. So I think that he probably does has a bit of respect for how Mandani came from nowhere, has a following, he's very enthusiastic. He was saying in this meeting, oh, I have foreign leaders come and they don't get as much attention as Mandani. But I also do wonder if it wasn't all, butter wouldn't melt from Donald Trump because Mandani has said that he is Donald Trump's worst nightmare. That's one of the things he campaigned on to motivate his base. So I think for him to be sat there as Donald Trump repeatedly, complimented him, was at least a little bit difficult for Mandani with parts of his base.
Yes, indeed. I bet it was. Brilliant stuff, Katy. Thank you ever so much for joining us this morning. And you can read Katy Balls in the Sunday Times tomorrow with a column or with a digital subscription via thetimes.com.
Free Epstein being in his emails that you said you knew about the girls.
I know nothing about that. They would have announced that a long time ago. It's really what did he mean when he spent all the time with Bill Clinton, with the president of Harvard, that is Summers, Larry Summers, whatever his name is, and all of the other people that he spent time with. Jeffrey Epstein and I had a very bad relationship for many years. But he also saw a strike because I was president. So he dictated a couple of memos to himself, give me a break. You're going to find out what did he know with respect to Bill Clinton, with respect to the head of Harvard, with respect to all of those people that he knew, including J.P. Morgan shares.
Sir,
Yeah,
if
Jennifer,
there's
go
nothing
ahead, go ahead.
incriminating in the file, sir,
Venezuela,
why
sir.
not why are you acting as a
Quiet, McGee.
Venezuela.
What did the president mean when he called reporter piggy?
Look, the president is very frank and honest with everyone in this room. You've all seen it yourself. You've all experienced it yourselves. And I think it's one of the many reasons that the American people reelected this president, because of his frankness. And he calls out fake news when he sees it. He gets frustrated with reporters when you lie about him, when you spread fake news about him and his administration. But he also is the most transparent president in history, and he gives all of you in this room, as you all know, unprecedented access